All right, it is 9 o'clock. I'm going to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order to discuss the town budget. I'll turn over the budget committee to...
It is 9 o'clock. I'll open up the budget committee joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. The intention of today's meeting is to allow the department heads to present their budgets that they put together to both the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. I've had a request just to ask everybody to either turn off their phones or their cell phones or silence them so we don't have any interruptions. So the intention is to allow everybody to present. Each board will then go off and review what they've been presented and see what their feelings are of the budget, and then hopefully we'll all get back together sometime towards the end of October. So I'm going to turn it over to Ernie to get started.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. We put together this budget overview, and what we're going to do is actually go over the changes in each one of the budgets today, and so keep sort of a synopsis. And of course, people can take questions if you'd like, but we are trying to get through this just to show you what the changes, highlight the changes in the budget from last year to this year. Last year, of course, was the default budget. Everybody's worked really hard to come in at a reasonable number. A lot of what's reflected here in this budget are the needs as reflected by department heads. We've made some wage adjustments for the people who didn't really receive them over the last 2 to 3 years when other departments did. So you'll see that really within administration, planning and codes, and in recreation. And we also have some in town clerk tax collectors area. We've slid some people in the interest of trying to meet the needs that we find in town hall to be able to do the administrative work that we have to do. We have slid a couple of people from part-time into full-time positions. We've eliminated a couple of part-time positions in order to do that, to achieve some savings. So what I'll do is get started here on this, and we'll go through and we'll see how it goes. I understand this is the first time we've tried this format here, and our goal was to bring everybody together, just give this synopsis of the budget changes, and have you all get it at the same time so that we can reduce the total number of meetings that have been done in the past, and to hopefully have you folks come back together, as Brian said, our Chairman Tebow, said toward the end of October, so that you can reconcile any differences you have between what you come up with and what we have now. So having said that, I'll get going on it. So I thought it would be important to go around the table and introduce everybody that's here, because we do have the Board of Selectmen, the Budget Committee, and town staff. So, I mean, you folks would like to do that, or unless you think everybody knows you pretty well, we can start right here with Peg if you'd like.
Peg Hurd, Budget Committee.
Dennis Woods, Budget Committee.
Humphrey Williams, Budget Committee.
Bob Carrier, Budget Committee.
Thomas McDougal, Budget Committee.
Andy Rossen, Selectman.
Brian Tebow, Selectman.
Erin Hutchings, Selectman. Tammy Smith, Budget Committee.
Larry Brown, Budget.
Okay. And
Michelle Beauchamp, Town Clerk, Tax Collector.
Nick Marie, Fire Chief.
Kathy Wallingford, Assessing Department.
Brian Ward, Code Official. Dale Sprague, Sewer.
Pat Smith, Public Works.
Bruce Woodruff, I'm the Town Planner.
And your public.
of course, we have
Public.
Richard Crosby.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. So, I'm Ernie Kruvling, Town Administrator. So, just the overall numbers. The 2019 default budget was $4,563,423. This proposed budget, and this is from the department heads to Budget Committee and Board of Selectmen, is 4.7 million. It's up 3.15%. And These slides give you a comparison of the request from 2019 to 2020 with the increases and decreases and percentage changes. We had 4 budgets that contained no changes, 17 that contained increases, and 8 that have decreases. As I said at the beginning, the budget includes wage increases for employees left behind over the past couple of years of adjustments in other departments. These changes adjust rates that will more comparably and equitably provide separation between the wages of new employees coming in at higher market rates and those long-term employees with years of experience, dedication, competence, and expertise in their respective areas of responsibility. 3 departments have adjusted the current part-time employees to full-time, or administration, town clerk, tax collector, office, and recreation and code enforcement. And these changes are a combination of succession planning. In other words, when some of people like me, who are not exactly young chickens anymore, move out of their positions, hopefully we've got somebody that's trained to step in and keep things going. So with that, we'll start with administration. This budget is up 2%, but actually there was a $3,800 line item that was moved out of it into a different line. That was for the New Hampshire Municipal Association dues. You'll see that later on in the budget. But most of this increase is in the salary that you're paying the town administrator, that's me. What's included with that, I've got a phone stipend, you see that up there, that's $480, it's $40 a month. That way the phone didn't have to get a phone, and some of you, probably a lot of you have my phone number and you've been using it, and I get calls from people in the public, and I give them my cell phone number because it's easier to get in touch with me, so, I mean, that's the reason for that. Of course, the pay-related amounts, Social Security, Medicare, go with the wages in there. And in this one also, we've switched the hours from welfare down to 5, where they were budgeted before for 20, and brought 27 hours into the admin budget, just because people around here know there are a lot of things that we have to catch up on, and I need help. There's no doubt about that. And I think what happens is everybody administratively in town hall sort of steps in and helps each other out. So it's sometimes it gets crazy here in trying to meet all the obligations, and this is reflective of that, trying to resolve that. We have contracted out payroll, which will start October 1st of this year. The reason for that is because it's very easy to make errors in payroll. Payroll errors can be expensive. The Department of Labor gets involved. I'll just let you know that we did get an issue with the IRS just last week. The potential for getting fines for incorrect things is high. We had a letter from them that said you need to pay us $56,000 because you didn't do this right in 2015, 16, 18, and the first couple of quarters of 19. So really doing this is going to help, because what happens is if there are any errors, the payroll company takes the liability. They are the ones that correct it, and their insurance is the one that covers it. With that $56,000 item, thanks to Joanne from Stonehill, Municipal Finance, and and Kathy, they worked really hard to get the documentation that shows that we did resolve those things. The federal government has large bureaucracy, so when Social Security got it, all that filtered down to the IRS was, hey, they had an error here and it needs to get corrected. They've already done that, so I think we'll be in good shape with that. But that's from 4 different time periods, from 2015 to 2019. So that's the reason for contracting out to Paychex. Joanne from Stonehill, that's really the only increase with her is the amount that went up on an hourly increase with her. So it wasn't a huge cost, but you see there we have a 2% increase there. So we'll move on to the next budget. Town clerk tax collector. We did slide from part-time into full-time. One of the folks that's existing in the office now, there has been the elimination of a part-time position there. And Michelle, if you want to expound upon that, please.
So in the last 7 years that I've been in the office, we've had 9 turnovers. I mean, 9 part-time employees. I think that a full-time employee will help me keep longevity in the office to make sure that that person is completely trained what, should something happen to your town clerk or tax collector, that that person can continue while the town clerk tax collector is out. I think I've been asking, this is my 3rd, maybe 4th year asking for a full-time person.
And so most of those increases there are wage-related from the salaries and Social Security and Medicare. And then, I mean, there are a few other items there that that have gone up, and for training, registry of deeds. That was something you were uncertain about because the registry's changed the way they're doing things.
Right. We now have our separate sub-account for registry deeds so that we can keep track of our billing. Also, in this budget, the increase we have, last year we only had 1 election, and I think the default was budgeted for 3. But this year we have 4 elections scheduled, and we always budget for 1 extra special election should it happen. There's also an increase on my salary line, and I think we've been waiting for the pay scale to be done for the rest of the employees, and it has not been done, so it's being reflected here in this budget. What else is going up? The training has also increased. The past 7 years, my employees have not been getting the training that they should be getting, only because we didn't ever have anyone as a backup to kind of cover for that person while they're out. Now, this proposal does have that. I think that's about it.
Great. All right. Good folks. So now the treasurer, with these, when there was no change, we didn't really go into any detail with it. So that's that request we made is at $10,381. Supervisor of the checklist, Michelle, I'll let you address this one, because I know there is a.
No,
I'm
it's
sorry.
fine.
Karen, sorry about
It's fine,
that.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, there is an increase, because like Michelle said, last year before the default, we have to budget yearly on the amount of elections coming our way. So that reflects 3 supervisors for the 4 elections, enough budgeted for the election that might happen. It has happened over a few years that we've been sitting here that we have to come up. It's mandatory. We don't get to say no. So just having a little bit of money sitting there to cover that emergency election, and then everything else has been stagnant. So it's really based on how much work is going to be incurred by going from 1 election to 5 elections, and the impact is 1313.
And none of your other items in there
Nope,
change.
everything stays the same. Yep.
For the moderator, here you go, Michelle.
Oh, well, the same situation where he's budgeting for the 4 elections plus the 1 extra special election should we have it. On the equipment line, he did budget for 900, and I will take blame for that. I gave him a number of $900, but when we actually looked and ordered the one for this year, it's actually maybe a little higher come the next couple of months. I believe it was $1160 was actually what the booths will cost.
Those are voting booths?
The voting booths, right. It's if you've noticed at elections, we have the new booths where there's a set of 4 in a pod. He's ordering 1 more this year, and then he'll be ordering another one next year to replace our deteriorating existing ballot booths.
For the budget committee. I'm not sure that those line items reflect where they were wanted to be placed, because Bob just gave me one this morning that's a little bit different, but the bottom line's the same. So, unless somebody from the budget committee wants to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm the one that put that together. It's a sheet with more information on it, so you'll know why the numbers are there. And what I've done last year, I was hoping to put the 4 lines in with the budget in there, but since we went to default, I lost the 4 lines, and I'm trying again to put those 4 lines in to break it down. The 2,600 is not all salaries. It's broken down into several parts, which I'll go over on this proposed budget. On the clerks, I'm budgeting for 24 meetings at $75 per meeting. On the training, I'm budgeting $540 for 6 at-large members to go to the budget seminar. I really have questions on this, but I'll bring it up at our meeting. I have some issues with it, but this is what I have to do, make sure, because it's just for the at-large. It does not mean the school board or the selectmen or the water district. They have their own budgets. Now, the legal notices, I'm on the high side of this. I got it for 3 public hearings at $250 apiece. It's going to depend on how many words we want to use, and never really seen a bill come back from any of those three departments. I'm not sure what we are paying. And the last one, printing and copies, I put down $100. Not sure again, because I was never told how much it costs us for what we printed. So this is where it stands. Our budget is $3,190 and is up 18%. You want to make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, if I might, the biggest thing that we're trying to do here with what we're showing is, hey, this is these new lines we're trying to add. These are not the final numbers. We got negotiations among the budget committee we're going to do to reduce these. But we're trying to break out, because before it was simply professional services and we lumped everything into that. We're trying to break it out to say, hey, we plan on budgeting this much for training, this much for legal services, this much for our professional services, which is primarily our recorder, and so on. So these numbers are not what the final numbers will be, or the bottom line isn't what the final number will be. We had to put something in there as a placeholder to fill out the line. So
just one more comment. On the bottom of the page, you can see the number of meetings I'm holding per month. So it gives you some idea here. There's possible room in there, but it's all going to depend on if everything comes the way it should come in. But you never know.
Mr. Brown?
If I remember that legal services is for legally required notices. We are not paying for the cost of a lawyer.
Correct.
Yeah, it's just for legal notices to publish it in the newspaper for the public hearings. That's a one-time shot.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Trustees of the trust fund?
Big me again. You can see everything is flatlined. The 23, which I didn't really think about asking for a little bit. Our bookkeeper has been at the same wage for, I want to say, 7 or 8 years, has not received an increase at all. The other 2 trustees are 100% volunteer. We get no, I've been doing it for probably close to 20 years. There's no stipend, no anything associated with the 2 trustees, just the bookkeeping position. This year it went up $224 because the state will no longer, although they want us to come to train to keep up with the laws and stuff, they're no longer giving that as a free service. We have to pay $70 each to go to keep up with the new laws, to find out what the new trends are, and so that's the only impact on my budget.
And then we have assessing, which is down 15%, mostly because of the new contracts with Avatar. Kathy, go right ahead.
As you can see, it has gone down 15%. A lot of the line items, such as the salary did go up with the adjustments that have been made along with other departments. A lot of the other line items such as supplies, postage. It does all tie into the contracted assessor. It has dropped down dearly because this year is strictly a cycle year. Last year was reval and cycle. They also are taking care of postage, they're taking care of anything they mail out, noticing, they take care of the printing. So I was able to reduce the different line items with a result of the 15% decrease. There is an increase in the software, and that's just the increase, an annual increase for Avatar. The programs actually are part of the building permits, which go into the land use, goes into the tax collector for collecting the tax bills. So we have to update as well as updating for the changes to the MS1 that the state makes. So in order to fill out that form, we do have to update the programs each year for any changes. So I have a decrease of $15,628.
Okay, move on to the next one. Insurance and benefits. The health insurance, we've gone over that up and down, and there's of course the potential with the couple of people that are sliding into full-time positions for them to take insurance. I don't know whether they will or not. I mean, don't ask the question, because the potential is there. I budget for it. And we budgeted for one extra two-person policy, just in case there's a need for that. Now it's down this year by $43,000, and I think the reason for that is the default budget last year had a higher number in it than probably it should have had. So we've corrected that with this budget, and what you have in there is valid for what we're looking at for the employees that we've got, plus the one two-person policy that we budgeted extra. Dental insurance, you see, went down as well. That's the same issue, with the difference between the default budget and what was actual. And then, let's see, the retirement, of course, that's up. Again, that's a result of adding personnel that are sliding into full-time positions, because the percentages didn't change from last year for us. Those are all the same, as well as for the police and fire. And as far as the unemployment insurance through Primex and workers' comp, property insurance, we left those the same. We may get an increase, we may not. It's been pretty steady. So, but again, with any of this budget, it's pretty preliminary. We won't have all of the insurance figures, the actuals, until probably early November, maybe late November. So with the health insurance, we actually, even with the increase, we used a 5% escalation for that just to cover. We don't know if it'll be 3%, 5%, 7%, but that may be something that has to be adjusted when we actually get the rates. So the overall decrease down there is 5% and down $40,000.
Excuse me, Ernie.
Yes.
Do you know how many people are taking the buybacks?
I think we have 4 people in the buybacks. Okay.
4?
Yeah. And that's included in that number as well. Cemetery, no change. I don't know if that's good or bad. Regional associations, this is the one I mentioned out of the administration budget. So that's okay. We have a government building. Sorry about that. Hey, Pat, you're on. Thank you.
Government buildings, full-time salary line an increase of 9532, which is 9%. That was due to some new hires at different rates. Also, it was due to increase in some of the full-time people that have been there longer. And it also includes a $7,000 allotment for overtime, which is for snow plowing, sidewalk, snow removal, mostly winter overtime. Fire and Medicare also reflect those increases. Heat, we had an increase of $1,500, which is 27%. The reason for that was the default budget in 2019 reflected for the $4,000, $1.93 a gallon for our heating oil. We did lock in at $2.21, so there's your increase for the amount of gallons for town hall. This is for town hall building only. Water decreased. We haven't used the 5750, so we lowered that by 2750. Government building supplies, $2,500 increase. That was for the adding of the cleaning person. So this is just to purchase supplies for all government buildings that we clean. Vehicle fuel, we added $500 to that, and that's because of the cleaning person. We have an extra vehicle now that we're putting gas in to go from building to building. Government buildings maintenance line went up $5,000, but all that is a transfer from the government buildings cemetery maintenance line. We brought to zero. We moved that $5,000 into the government buildings maintenance line. And it's just, we do the work on the cemeteries anyway, and it just makes it easier to use out of the maintenance line than it is to try to attach things to the cemeteries. And then equipment purchase was a decrease because we have no big purchases this year. So my total increase was $5,110, with a 3% increase over last year's default.
Ernie, and this is just a general comment I wanted everyone to be able to look at. There's a mistake on all of these forms that people, and I want the public to understand, if you look at the increase and decrease lines and you look at the percentages, and this isn't anything to reflect on yours, Pat, it's just that I know it stands out here. When you guys calculated the percentage, you used the proposed 2020 budget as your base instead of the 2019 budgets as your base. And it makes all the percentages a lot different. I mean, the overall doesn't change much if you look at the bottom line because you didn't increase much. But the reason I'm bringing it up is I know the heat costs went up quite a bit, Pat, and it shows a 27% increase, but the reality is that's because it shows 1,500 versus the 5,500. It's actually 1,500 versus the 4,000 budget, and that's 37.5%. So somebody's going to see these numbers and they're going to go, wow, those numbers don't quite add up. And I think that happened right now. That happened on the entire thing, that we used the wrong column was used for calculating those. So I just want people to understand that that's the bottom line shows the increase and decrease in the dollar amounts, but the percentages are off.
Well, thank you for pointing that out. We'll check it out and make those changes.
Yeah.
If I might, just one comment on government buildings. A lot of the lines that we see increases, if the budget would have passed last year, these where we, the increase to gas for the car and things like that, those were in place this year, so they would have been reflected in last year's budget, correct?
They should have been,
Okay.
It would have been if the budget had passed.
Yeah, because if you look at it, it looks like, holy cow, there's a lot of increases here, even though the bottom line only increased 3%.
Yeah.
But had the budget passed last year, these would have been in. So it's based on basically the year before's budget for these line items.
Because we had the cleaner before the budget had the opportunity to pass.
Yep. Yeah, just want to, where everybody sees this about how much everything's changing, and it's, had the budget passed, these would have been baked into the budget this year.
Cemetery, we just looked at that. There's no change. This is the Regional Association line I told you came out of the administration budget. This is a common line that's in the DRA's codes for budgeting, so we brought that out just so people could see that. There's been talk about adding Stratford Regional Planning, paying dues to them and getting into it. I think the idea, in talking with the chair, is to perhaps put that into a warrant article to see what people think. I understand that's been something that's come up, and I think you've been out of Stratford Regional Planning for about 5 years, but I think the planning board, Bruce, do you want to speak to that for Stratford Regional Planning really quickly? NHMA, just for you, we're members of them because they we're able to get some legal advice from them. We also get our dental insurance through New Hampshire Municipal, so we are actually huge-paying members of that organization. But Stratford Regional Planning.
Well, I will. I mean, the value that you get for the dues, which is around $5,000, but you're aware that the executive director actually came to Board of Selectmen meeting and intimated that they would allow us to slide in a little bit on that first year. So I'm not thinking that the warrant article needs to be any more than about $3,500 to $4,000. The bottom line is that the value that the town gets for their assistance that they don't charge you for when you're a member, is invaluable. So I think that the cost benefit is there. So and the bottom line is, of course, that either they won't do the work for you if you're not a member, or they charge you consultant rates.
Yeah, so there are a couple of things with that, and then I'll get off of it. But they can help us a little bit with something called MS4, which is a federal program administered through EPA that Milton has been a part of since 2003. So there was a new permit that was issued last year, and by October 2018, we were supposed to have a notice of intent. We haven't really done that at this point, so we're trying to catch up. We're about 10 months behind that. We need to catch up and get that in place. And I mean, the planning board's already started with that, but that's one of the things Stratford Regional Planning can help with. One other thing that happened, Bruce did a lot of hard work on a grant application for transportation for this project up at Silver Street that you talked about several times. And just because it wasn't clear in there, their transportation planner would have been able to catch this, we were just kicked out of it automatically, even though it was a good application, strong, and Bruce did a lot of work on it because it wasn't clear that you had to have a baseline of over $1 million just for the local share for it to be valid. So that's one of those things, you miss out on opportunities when you don't take advantage of some of these regional experts. So anyway, that's...
It has been actually closer to 10 years that we have not been part of Stratford Regional. At one time, in an older hat, I was the chair of the executive board, and what Bruce did not say is that the responsibilities and expertise of the town planner are not a replacement item for Stratford Regional. They are complementary to it. We get much value for Bruce because literally I've been there and seen both sides.
Police Department, Chief?
So the increases for mine are mostly salary-based, but you do see two increases. The two large increases are in uniforms and in equipment purchase. Both of those lines, I've spoke to both of these boards for a couple of years about needing to increase those lines. Last year's budget, when I presented it, I told you I needed to increase my uniform line. I moved the uniform line up to $10,000. The cost for uniforms, just to buy a jacket for our officers, is just about $510. That jacket is a winter jacket, which also encompasses their raincoat and their fall jacket. But like I said, it's $510 per officer just for the jacket. Uniform shirts are $55 a piece for a long sleeve and a short sleeve. We supply each officer 2 of each of those when we hire them, and pants are about $60 a piece, and we do 2 of those each. That's just in that stuff. That doesn't even include the duty belt, which just the holster on the duty belt is $225 itself. So to outfit one officer, if we don't have any of that equipment to fit that officer, it's about $2,000, just right off the top. If we don't get the grant for the vest to offset the vest, which is usually about 50% of the vest, that's another $800 that we have to add on per officer. Thankfully, we've been able to get that since I've been chief, and I think we've received it since 2004. Always receiving the grant, which offsets that cost. So by going up to $10,000, that allows me to give each officer a $500 per year to update their uniforms for the officers that are still here, because unfortunately we have officers that have not had a full uniform update in a few years, and their uniforms are getting a little tattered because we have to hold that money aside to be able to outfit the new officers that we have to hire. As you guys know, we've had to hire 2 officers at least per year for the last couple of years, either losing officers to getting out of law enforcement or losing officers to other agencies and other types of law enforcement agencies. So with that cost, if we don't have that money set aside and I spend that money on the officers that are here and outfit them with brand new uniforms, I don't have any money to outfit the brand new officers. That still leaves me with giving each officer the $500 to spend on that. That still leaves me $5,000 if I have to replace 2 officers to be able to replace their equipment. The equipment purchase line. So I moved that up to $10,000, $6,200. Right now, thankfully, we're fixing it. Hopefully it's not just a short-term Band-Aid, but our base station radio went down. The base station radio is about 18 years old. I just talked to Justin Bellins at the fire department, and he said that they have the modern edition of ours, and it cost approximately $9,200. I thought it was closer to $6,200. So thankfully, we're getting it fixed for about $225, and we're fixing that. But this is the 3rd fix in my career on that same device. It's not going to continue to be able to be fixed. So $9,200 piece of equipment that we have to have inside the station is going to wipe out my $6,200 line right now. And if we move it up to $10,000, just that one piece of equipment is going to wipe out that line. Tasers are $1,200 a piece. Firearms are $425 a piece. Body cameras are $625 a piece. So when all of these pieces of equipment break and we have to replace them, they come out of that line. The portable radios are $4,200 a piece. The town has been very lucky that we get the federal and state grant to replace our portable radios. Those grants are going to slowly start going away. As we saw this year in the highway safety grant that we received, every year that's decreased over the last 3 years. We went from $28,000 to $14,000. This year we're getting $5,000 in highway safety money. The radio money is going to do the same exact thing. So if I have to replace 1 or 2 portable radios because the guys are struggling with someone and end up in the lake like we've had before, it's $4,800 that I have to replace the portable radio. I can't do that with $6,200. So I have to have something set aside to be able to do that. And I can't shut down my whole budget to be able to replace equipment. PD salary line only went up $1,000. The reason it only went up $1,000 is because of turnover. So we were able to give everyone the step they should have been on this year based off of the money, and only going up $1,000 because of the turnover. So we had some officers that were receiving a much higher rate of pay who left, and we hired 1 certified officer and 1 uncertified officer, so most of that washed. You should see that in the packet that I gave you. You should see it explained all the breakdown for that. The rate change for the other 2 salaries, mine and the administrative assistant, are set for what the selectmen set it at. For the administrative assistant, which is the 2% merit and 1.7% COLA, and then for mine is to put me at the step where I should have been this year for half a year. All of the other changes go within the salary change. Retirement is the full year of the 1% decrease from 28.43% down to, or 29.43 down to 28.43%. So it's a 1% savings for us this year. It shows as a 3% savings, but it's 1% in the percentage of savings. So for those of you who have been on the budget committee for a while, you know that starting in 2014, the retirement rates went from about 14 or 15%, and last year they were at its highest point of 29.43%. So that's probably been the largest driver in the police department's increases of budgets over all of our years, is the huge increase in retirement. Training went up $1,500. Training goes up $1,500. Unfortunately, after almost 19 years, I've taken just about every class that the academy offers. So there are really no more classes that I can go to that are beneficial to me and to the town. So what that's going to unfortunately have to start doing is have me go to either out-of-state trainings or conference-based trainings. And that's what that $1,500 add-on is for. Contracted services went up because of the change in our records management fee went up a little bit, and our dispatching fee went up a small amount. And then electric shouldn't still be as up, I don't believe. I thought I brought that back to 7,200, but either way, electric shows an up at $500.
Rich, you didn't increase your heat cost?
I did not increase my heat cost. We locked in at $1.50 with each utility.
There's a few cents less than last year.
Yes,
Oh,
and
good.
so that allows me to fill up the 1,000-gallon propane tank twice
Good.
for the whole year. So I don't see a need, since we finally fixed the roof on the police department, we have not been spending a large amount of money in heat. So thankfully the building has retained its, that's one thing it does for us well. Does anyone have any other questions on that budget?
Yeah, one other. What about your phone system? Is that?
So I'm still going through the quotes that we received for the phone system. The quotes are very different because they are two different types of systems. One set of quotes is voice over IP. The other system is very similar to what the fire department has, which is an in-house hardline system. And then the third quote we received is like it's a hybrid system. It has the hardline system and it mixes in the voice over IP. The quotes unfortunately range from $13,000 down to about $500. So obviously voice over IP is a monthly service fee cost, which you pay and you purchase all your phones, and then your voice over IP through the hook in and things like that. It's very low money up front, but then you're paying monthly service costs. Whereas the hardline system, you have a system put into your building, you have full control over it, but there's heavy upfront cost, and then you pay your phone bill, obviously. But yes, that's another system that's, depending on which system the town decides to do, that's a cost that has to be done probably within the next 6 months.
Yep.
Thank you, Chief. I would like to piggyback on one thing that the Chief said about systems. That's something that seems to have fallen behind here. I think virtually every computer in town hall, I mean, I think we have three or four maybe that have been updated, but they're all on Windows 7, which is going to come to end of life at the end of this year. I mean, in fact, this laptop right here is another one. This thing freezes up all the time. I'm glad it's working well today, but yeah, that's something that we really need to work on as well. So we're trying to work out the systems on a rotating basis. Now, of course, that'll be taken care of in CIP, but I mean, the chief is experienced with his phones, he's got computers he's replacing as well, and then the radio, so it's, those are concerns. To fire. Chief?
All right, I'll try to be quick. The time we spent together this summer, I think, was very useful. So we got a lot of things discussed, and I think it was very productive. So overall, it ends up being a decrease, and that's strictly because I found $200, and it just put me below when I took that last $200 out. So salary full-time reflects the COLA and merit for the 2 full-time employees. The elected salary reflects, there is no raise in that for this year. It reflects the raise that was given in 2018, but didn't carry over in the default budget. Social Security, Medicare is reflective of the above raises. The retirement system, like the police chief said, it went down 1%. Ours is a little bit different. It's 30-point-something%, and it was upwards of 33, I believe. But it went down a little bit, so that's reflective of that. Contract services, we took 2 things out. We took the website out, and now we're piggybacked with the town's website, and the pay clock system that we use. A couple other things went up and down in the line. You have the detailed breakdown of that, but overall, there's a reduction. The increase is reflective of what I requested last year, but didn't go through because of the default. Water is a decrease due to historical usage. Telephone system is a reflective of the cut that we made last year by shutting the phone off at Station 2. Printing, just looking at historical usage, we were able to take $100 out of that. Supplies, again, with the new station, we can buy in bulk, and we have a better handle on what's going on there. So again, I made that cut last year. It didn't reflect in the default budget, so that's now reflected again in this budget. Postage, we only use a very small amount, but another $20-25 in case we have to mail something out, a package or something like that. Vehicle fuel, again, I have my Excel charts, and that's what the average came out to be, so I added $50. Diesel fuel is down $200, and that's because I transferred the ambulance fuel to the revolving account. So they were separate a few years ago when the diesel prices dropped. I tried to save some in the revolving account and paid for ambulance fuel out of this budget. But now that the prices are creeping back up and usage is creeping back up, I put it back to the revolving account, so I was able to reduce that a little bit, and we'll see where it goes. And then the equipment lease, again, that was taken out last year, but because of the default budget, it went back in there. So overall, it's a $26 decrease. And again, this is a status quo budget to maintain the services we're providing. It's not a proactive budget, and we've talked about that this summer, about our needs in the future. And like I said, this doesn't reflect any of that. It's just maintaining for another year at the level of services we've been providing, and hope that we can do it. The per diem line didn't change. I talked to you guys about that. But I'm able to cover that through the part-time line for now. So that's the down and dirty version of what's going on there.
So for a number of these items, you projected your usage for this year, and were able to reduce your request because you can see that you're not actually spending it.
Correct.
Okay, that's commendable. Thank you.
Would like to mention also good work on the grant, because that by itself, which I know was out there, was a huge savings for the town, and I would like you to just talk about that a minute as far as
yeah. So for 3 years now, we've applied for a FEMA grant to replace the air packs. Obviously, at the same time, we were putting money away in capital reserve in case the grant didn't come through. We ended up having enough money through warrant articles to make the purchase, but it was, again, the bare minimum, not the amount that we needed. So we would have been able to buy 20 packs and replace what we had. But because the grant came through, we were able to get the 25 that we needed. And that money will now remain in capital reserve for the next CIP project. So it actually, instead of constantly being behind, trying to catch up, we have a chunk of money in capital reserve now so that we can make the next purchase, whether it's replacing the ladder with the used ladder or putting it towards the tanker or however that's going to work in the future. But for the first time, capital-wise, we're in a good position. So we'll be going through demoing a couple different manufacturers, putting an RFP out over the next couple months, and moving forward with that. So third time's a charm, $171,000. And this was the last year. The air packs are unserviceable as of July, coming up. So we got it just in the nick of time. No pun intended.
Nicely done.
Nick, I'm just wondering, is the, what was it, 5% that you had to come up with, is that coming out of the capital reserve account?
It can.
Okay, because I'm not seeing it in your actual budget, so.
It would. So I was looking at the numbers last night. My equipment purchase line, I have $4,500 left in, which I was planning on buying hose, but I might be able to sneak it out of this year's budget if I hold off on a couple other things.
Okay. Just curious.
I won't know till the end of the year, but I would put some stuff aside so that we don't have to spend the capital reserve money so that can go towards other capital projects, if I can get it out. But we'll see. If I can't, if this ends up being too tight come November, December, then the capital reserve it's what it was put there for. It was intended for that, so there's no issue getting that money out for that.
Thank you, and congratulations, seriously.
Thank you.
You're good. Is your actual truck meeting expectations?
More than, yeah, doing good. Except for the batteries, $700 worth of batteries we had to replace, but other than that, we're into it for 20% of what we paid for it. Anything else?
No, I just want to congratulate you and the captain for your dedication and all your hard work for the grants. You've done well on grants for this town, and you should be recognized. So thanks, Chief.
He's good with words. So if anybody needs some total.
Careful what you ask for.
No, it was good, and we obviously qualified due to them expiring. And FEMA basically says there's a certain age where you can apply for them, and you'll either make it past the computer scoring or you won't. So as soon as we knew we'd make it past the computer scoring, which they consider them obsolete at 12 years, they're actually there's a 15-year life expectancy. So you have that 12 to 15-year window to apply for them, but you can't count on it. One mistake, and you're out. Last year we misread a box that we had to check, which was pretty clear in my mind. We checked the right box, but we didn't, so we didn't even make it to peer review last year.
Thank you, Chief. Planning and code. So I'll start with, this is one of the budgets where we are moving one of our part-time folks into their part-time. We'll be doing 20 hours in planning and code and the other 20 in recreation. So that
12 in
oh, I'm sorry, 12. Yeah, it's up to 32 hours. 20 here and 12 in recreation. So that's 36% increase in the wages. And these other items here, Brian, I don't know if you want to address any of these. We talked about them together, but I can go down through if you would rather have me do it. Okay. All right. So let's see, you see reductions, let's see, what in, let's see, training. And, you know, again, I'm not sure, we went through and did that, and Bruce, did you talk about the reductions here?
I'm not gonna talk about reductions, I'm gonna talk about the town planner, contract services amount is staying exactly the same.
So we had looked at the trends on these other ones that went down, and I think that's the reasoning behind these line items that have gone down here in the budget, other than, of course, the wages. So you see a total of $22,000 increase in that line, and that's pretty much reflective of the part-time position that's brought into there. Plus, of course, the COLA and the 2% in the COLA to the others.
We should let them know that there are no retirement and no health benefits for this position either that we're adding.
Correct.
Which saves a substantial amount of money.
Well, actually, no, there is, because it's a 32-hour total, 12 in recreation, and, right.
Okay, so it's split. Right. Okay.
If I might ask, how can we increase the salaries in this line but yet have Social Security decrease? Where would the Social Security be reflected for the additional 20 hours worth of work?
Yeah, you may have caught an error there. I appreciate it. We'll have to look at that.
And Ernie, the other piece on that, you said that there was a part-time change. I don't see a change on part-time, it's just on full-time, according to that up there.
Well, no, it's, okay, there's the full-time salary up there is actually Brian, let's see, and
Ashley.
we have Ashley there, and then as far as the part-time, that combination line right there, that contains, I'm sorry, I'm gonna back up. Proposed budget, 58,000 in full-time, that's Ashley, and it's the 20 hours of the new building inspector that will come in there. The 12 hours is in recreation. So that's why the increase there. The part-time position is reflective of Brian's wage.
Do you guys understand how he's coming up with, because they might not understand what we're trying to do here, or you're trying to do, or
All right,
propose.
so we have the land use clerk is in that full-time line now. What we did was we took an existing part-time employee in recreation, and we moved them into 20 hours in this line, but 12 hours in recreation, which makes the person a full-time employee. So it's just the 20 hours is budgeted there, and the other 12 in recreation, kind of like in the welfare administration line, where part of it is in welfare and the other part is in administration. So we moved that in there. So we have somebody in there that's able to concentrate more time on the actual code enforcement, violations like dangerous buildings, junkyards, those kinds of things. But at the same time, could work with Brian to train on building inspections. So that's what we have going on in there. I hope that clarifies it a little bit.
Yeah, well, and I understand that. The only reason I brought that up was you had mentioned that there was a change in the part-time, and that line is still the same. That was the reason I brought that up. But, and Tom's comment about Social Security was also, like, as we caught earlier.
Yeah.
But where it is full-time, I was just looking at where else the benefits would be coming out. I would have expected to see a change in the two areas, rec department and here, because it is gonna be reflective of a full-time position, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the sewer department is now what I will call a pro forma obligation. It's not just a special category. For the land use clerk had also been doing sewer department work. So that continues just as a regular part of the job.
Right. But that's a good point as well. We can look at. So we'll take a look at this budget here, and any correction, we'll make sure we get to you. So thank you for pointing that out. Planning board. This one was, planning board, as I understand it, along with the ZBA, are going to start using an escrow system so that, with your, with the planning board, for instance, when an applicant comes in, I know you recently increased the amount for public notice and so forth, for the public hearings, and but as well, with an escrow system, which is something that I've used virtually every community I've been in. You have an application process, there's a fee schedule set up, and any applicant would put that money forward and be put into an escrow account to be drawn down on for these things. And at the end of that, then any differences there is reimbursed to the applicant. And that's the reason for these decreases here. Lucy, do you want to talk about the training?
Well, again, we looked at historical trends for the amount of money that was spent on training for the planning board, and it was quite a bit lower than $250 per year. So that reduction is based again on historical trends. I do want to talk about the public notices and the postage as well. The change that we made to the amount of money that we get for public notice and postage was never able to be collected by the land use clerk because you couldn't figure out how much it was until you actually got a bill from the newspaper and you sent out the number of abutters with certified letters. So what we did, we came to the Board of Selectmen and asked to raise those to the amount that was actually needed for the public notice so that we could collect the money up front. And then this is the second piece to it. That amount of money then goes into an escrow account instead of coming through the general budget. So those pieces all come together.
If I might, on the planning board, I don't know if I'm missing something, but the numbers don't add up. 150, 1 and 1's 152. You got 1,052, and 250, 400, and 200. That's like 850, not 1,750.
It looks like this whole land use section has to be looked at.
And I mean, that's, that may impact the final, I don't know how the final number on the budget spreadsheet was gathered,
No,
but that may affect that.
I actually can see it on your original one. You, under the 2019 defaults, you had, like for printing and all that, $100 under the line items. You still had that on your regular one, but when you compressed it looking at just the changes, you actually had rolled up all the numbers as if they had all changed, but a lot of those were just the same as the 2019 budget.
1,052 is correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have the other budget that you can look at, but that's fine.
Yeah, it includes things that didn't change, that's the
Right.
reason.
Right.
Like I said,
Yeah.
you look at the numbers here and what
Right
we
here.
got on the date, it doesn't.
You're right, it's right here.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, so on all of these budgets, what we did was we just showed the line items that changed, so the
Okay.
total.
All right.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah. I feel stupid for not noticing that on the other ones. That was the case with all of them. This one just really jumped out.
I think the other ones did
It's like
reflect.
there's a decimal point there somewhere.
Yeah, so here's the same thing here too. So your net change is the 650. The $650 increase down there. Wait a minute, what did you say? Yeah, I'm not going to try to explain that, but you.
850 decrease.
Yeah, $850 decrease. But so if we show the totals, they give you the whole budget. That
Yeah.
correct. So.
Okay.
And you will have
that would just happen to jump out at me.
Okay. When we have that, we will make sure that we post that along with all of these, so that way it'll be clear. Okay. So this is pretty much the same thing, right?
It is.
Conservation Commission. This is basically, I got these numbers from Steve Panish, who sent them over to me. I really can't speak to this. Conservation Commission that we need to. Emergency management, there was no change. Highway, on that.
Highway salary full-time increase is due to wage increase, step increase, and a COLA. Also, we had to increase the overtime line based on the data that we had. We're averaging about 32 events a year, which calculates to approximately 240 hours of overtime. So based on what we pay per hour for the overtime, I calculated about 48,000 based on the 32 events. And some years we went well over 32 events, but some years we were under, the 32. So it averaged out to be, I think, over a 5-year period. I think we got those 5 years that I calculated, they came to the 32 events. Highway salary part-time is also a wage increase, but also I added 5 extra hours starting in July 1st when the raises will probably take place. So that increased that line by $47.80. Highway elected is a step increase with the COLA. And FICA and Medicare are based upon the increases. Testing, highway testing, that is a random federal drug testing for CDL licenses. Also, that line also covers any new hires, and over the last couple of years we've had a bunch of different new hires, so we have to pay for drug testing before we can even bring them on. So I increased that by 500. Also on the randoms, we don't know from quarter to quarter if we're going to have a test that quarter or 5 tests that quarter. It's a random drawing, so whatever number comes up, if you're in that number, you go and have that test. Contract services, an increase of $8,600, and that was an increase in the street sweeping, which we do in the springtime. The amount of the contract and the sweeper had doubled because of increasing, everything, I guess. They just went up on us on that. The other thing that I did add on that wasn't on the last request I turned in was line striping. Line striping is what we did on Townhouse Road and what we've done in the Milton Mills area. This number also includes Dawson Street, Steeple Street, and Elm Street. If that passes, then those streets will be added to next year's line striping. The double yellow line that we put down has cost us 17 cents a foot, and the 2 white lines is 8.5 cents per foot per side. So it comes up to 17 cents to do both sides per feet. The operating supply line shows a decrease right now of $55.60. That line is going to change, and what I did is I had that calculated with last year's salt price per ton, which was $47. The default budget was a $54 per ton, so we actually used less. I mean, you paid less last year for it, but the default did come in that way. I'm not sure what the price is yet because I don't have the contract. I won't get that contract until sometime this month. It should be by the end of the month or whatever. I'm anticipating it going up because that's what I've heard, but that's a state bid contract, so whatever the state gets for the bid is what municipalities can ride on. So I'm just waiting for that to come out, and I'll adjust that line accordingly. Vehicle fuel, We went up $1,500. The reason for that increase was last year, we had a ton of trouble with our dump trucks. We have the International Dump Truck 7400, and is the year that we bought those trucks, just the engines in them are just no good. They don't make that engine anymore. They took them out after 2 years. Unfortunately, we got stuck with 3 trucks with that engine. So what we had to do last year in order to keep up with the plowing is we used pickup trucks to plow dump truck routes. So we used more fuel in the pickup trucks last year. Hopefully that's not going to happen this year, but I did plan for it. And I didn't change the diesel fuel line, for the dump trucks, because I'm not, if they're running, I'm going to need it. If they're not running, then I won't. So I didn't do anything with that. On the equipment maintenance line, I increased that by $5,000, and that's in anticipation of one of the trucks that is past the 7-year extended warranty. So if anything happens to that, we have to pay for that now. So I put $5,000 in there, just in case, we have issues with that one truck. The other 3 trucks, though, that we are having issues with, we're not paying anything for, because I got the extended warranty, bumper-to-bumper warranty. So International has to pay for the towing, they have to pay for the work, they have to pay for all of that stuff. Sometimes there might be a wear and tear item that they won't cover that might be $100 or $200 or something like that, and I'll have to pay for that. But all the major stuff that they've done with these trucks and the towing, they pay for on that warranty that we did. So based upon raises, increase in contract services, increase in supplies, and the increase in supplies, by the way, is because of the tariffs on steel. Everything steel's gone through the roof. And we also had approximately $1 per gallon increase in oil, like motor oils, different synthetic stuffs that we have to use. And not every vehicle takes the same type of oil, so we have to buy a bunch of different types of oil. And so that was an increase in that. So the total increase for Public Works from the default of 2019 is $80,136.
I have something online, which is not that, and which is not the printout, but equipment lease, membership dues, and miscellaneous. There was $1 budgeted, there's $1 proposed, but yet expenditures to date, equipment lease is 106, membership dues is 1786, and miscellaneous
I'll
is,
have that in front of you.
okay. All right, just totally curious, because it's like, we're only budgeting $1 and proposing $1, and we're spending that much money. Well, whatever we got online has the year-to-date expended. And I'm just looking at this. All right, then let's go to the
Current,
okay.
what we got, I can answer that one. What we've got on our data does not reflect what's in the actual expenditures to date report. So those numbers are off. That's what that is, Pat. It shows expenditures of about $117,000 on what we got for a report. But when we look at your year-to-date expenditures, there's nothing.
All right,
So
yep.
that's a mistake on what I think we got for data.
Yeah, those year-to-dates, unfortunately, those got included in there. I think those, last time I actually put those in the spreadsheet back in July, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming those amounts have been corrected, taken out, moved wherever they belong?
Yep.
Okay, good, thank you. Phew.
Pat, would you just, one, do I remember correctly, on your salt purchase price, the state contract price does not include an add-on for distance for transportation?
Oh, the price is delivery.
It is including
Delivery,
delivery. And does that, at one point, a cost for transportation was raising your price from Portsmouth to here?
I don't recall that.
No, okay, I was wrong. Then we'll try the second one. For different storm events, you are mixing the salt with the sand to what you need for that storm.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else? Okay, solid waste.
Okay, solid waste, full-time salary line went up due to the raises, also COLA. Also, there's a $2,000 allotment for overtime there, and that allotment was for coming in early to plow, to get the scales ready, clean the scales off, whatever he needs to do to open the transfer station after a storm. The part-time line also represents raises. This part-time line is 3 employees, and between the 3 employees, it's a total of 46 hours a week. And that also includes a step increase in a COLA. And those, they each do different jobs. One is a 20-hour truck driver's job that does all the hauling at, on the off days, and the other 2 are the weekend attendant for 2 days, and another part-time attendant would be with the supervisor for 4 days, which is that's a 30-hour. We only do 6 hours on Monday with that attendant, and 8 hours the other 3 days. The next big increase was on the disposal line, solid waste disposal line. We have got about a 3% increase in tipping fees, and I think they're gonna go up again, and I'm not sure. They're not giving us a number yet. They're just saying that they may go up, they may not, but tipping fees have gone up. So I took the data that I have for the MSW and the co-mingles that we pay out of that line, and estimated what we're gonna tip this year in tonnage, and took that price, and that's how I got the extra $2,000. And they could go up and down based on what we bring in. I mean, if we go over the tonnage that we average, it will go up. If we stay under the tonnage, it's just based upon what comes through the gate. Let's see, and everything else has been pretty much the same. What I am doing though is, we've noticed, because we use the revolving account a lot for other tipping fees for bulky waste and construction debris, for fluorescent light bulbs, for refrigerators. We have to remove the Freon. There's a bunch of different things that we have to do. And we've used the revolving account for that. But we've got increases in like the electronics and the televisions that we get rid of. And so we're doing a study and trying to match what we're actually paying out of the revolving account based upon what we're bringing in. And what we're finding in that study is that we probably are going to need to come before the Board of Selectmen and adjust some prices to help that revolving account, because right now it seems like we're taking more out of the revolving account than we're going in. If we continue on that trend, then we're going to use all that money. Then we're going to go back into trying to put money into the budget for the transfer station. And that wasn't the goal for the revolving account. The goal was to let that revolving account support the transfer station as much as it can. And we take care of all of our maintenance out of that revolving account, for the truck or for any of the compactors. Anything that we have to do for maintenance comes out of the revolving account. A lot of our operating supplies comes out of the revolving account. Purchases come out of, if we have to purchase a piece of equipment or something like that, it comes out of the revolving account. So we use the revolving account for a bunch of different things. And if you look at the proposed budget, anything that has $1 in it, we pay for that out of the revolving account. So, and another thing that I've had conversation with the town administrator with is we're trying to look at different ways to make the solid waste department more self-sufficient. There's some other ideas that we have of, of user fees, which would take the burden off of the whole public. And if you're using the transfer station, you would pay to use the transfer station. If you're not using the transfer station, you wouldn't pay, you would pay for the transfer station. So we have some ideas that I think will come out probably by the time warrant articles come out, maybe, to ask the public what their thoughts are. We need to have a conversation with the selectmen based upon those ideas that the town administrator and I have been tossing around. So we're working on trying to make this budget as small as we can by user fees instead of taxing everybody for the transfer station.
All I can say is $5 a year to use the transfer station is absolutely ludicrous. I mean, I talked to people in other towns, and it's either so much per barrel, or, I mean, as a citizen of this town, I would have no problem paying a lot more to be able to take all of my stuff to the transfer station. And when you stop and think of the people who have pickup, A, it's a lot more, and B, they do not recycle. So, just saying.
I would like to mention one other thing that I just thought of. The revenues that we've been getting out of the transfer station, for example, the paper and the cardboard, we've been paying $35 a ton to get rid of paper and cardboard.
Yeah.
So we're not getting any revenues, and this is another fee that's been coming out of the revolving account that we're not collecting revenues for. Aluminum cans have dropped considerably. We're not getting the price out of aluminum cans that we were getting before. And just things are not where they were. We're not getting the revenue that we've been getting to maintain what we're paying out. We've been doing fluorescent light bulbs for free, but fluorescent light bulbs cost us 58 cents a pound to get rid of. A 4-footer weighs 2 pounds. So these are the things that we're looking at to try to adjust to help offset that cost. If we can't do that, then we're obviously going to have to start increasing the disposal line in solid waste in order to cover these costs, because we're just not going to have the money anywhere to cover.
Just before we move on, and just to kind of address it, you've got $200,000 in there. If that was to come down based on a user fee, that would reduce, well, I'm talking about the proposed budget being $204,000, right?
Yes.
If it was all covered under a user fee, vice taxes, that's 50 cents off per $1,000. That's a pretty good savings on taxes. So,
But from the other side of that argument, I only drive Elm Street on Mondays. Can you figure out a way so that I can save the 6/7 of the cost of paving Elm Street for me? That no one is immune from a household waste. It is a town-wide service, and not particularly a user fee. Unless every box store and every pizza wrapper from Cumbies goes back to that store, it's town-wide.
Well, what I'm talking about in user fees, Larry, is that, let's just say that you only, you may generate one 30-gallon trash bag of trash a week, and it's $1 for that bag. You're gonna pay $1 a week to get rid of that bag. But let's just say that Tammy does 7 bags. She's going to pay $7 to get rid of that bag. User fee for MSW. So it's gonna be based upon what you use. I can sit in my office and look out the window, and I can watch pickup trucks coming in, loaded to the hilt with garbage bags. You guys are paying for that. Where's it coming from? That's my point. My point is, why should you pay for what somebody else is doing? If they're picking up other people's trash and you're getting paid for it, why should you pay for them to dispose of it?
Pat, didn't we talk, when we met earlier this year, didn't we talk about the fact that you know for a fact that there are
There are some.
stuff that's coming in from out of town?
Yep,
So if
it's difficult to
those-
go approve it, but you know
Yeah,
by
understood.
who you see
But
coming
with
in.
with a real user fee, an
Right.
adequate user fee,
It would stop that.
well, you'd collect the money at least, right? I mean, they might still bring some of it in, but you'd get them to pay for it, as opposed to reflected in their tax rate.
Anything else for Pat?
In talking about overtime for both the highway department and solid waste, is overtime anything over 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week? How is overtime
Yes.
figured?
I'll be both.
Okay. So they hit
If
8.5
they
hours,
work 8
that's
hours
a
a day, and then they come in after 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever their ending time is, they automatically go on time and a half.
Okay, yeah. I know some states overtime's over 40 hours a week, so you could work, 3 days and get your 40 hours in, and, you don't get overtime for that extra time you worked over 8 hours a day. So I just wasn't sure how we did it.
All right, outside appropriation. Now this one, we did have one request come in from American Red Cross for $325. You've got a couple of others that came in since this was done. So the selectmen haven't seen any of that. So at this point, what you've got in there is what you've been paying. And then American Red Cross is added because we got that early enough. But as far as the others, we'll need to bring those to the selectmen and then update the budget committee as those get updated if they do. And then welfare, I'll just start with the salary. And this is one where we reallocated that there's 5 hours a week towards welfare. And if you probably average it out over the year, I talked to Danielle about this quite a bit, and that seems to work. Some weeks there'll be more, some there'll be less, but we reallocated the other 27 hours to admin because, again, with all of these things that we're going back and coming up to date with, plus keeping up to date in the future, we really need to have the help in that office. So that's why the reallocation. And as far as the other lines going down, those were based on the trends for the last 3 years or so, and that's the only reason those came down. That overall budget came down by $18,000. 9 of that would have been the salary line being reallocated out of it. So I don't know if you want to speak to any of those, Danielle.
No, really, it's all pretty self-explanatory. The welfare budget is one of those mandated by the state of New Hampshire that you have to provide regardless the amount in the budget. I know that there's been confusion on the expended of the salary of this year. The default budget was calculated differently than could have been.
Well, I'll jump on it.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as, if you look at year-to-date spent, again, we have a lot of things that we're trying to take care of, catch up on and so forth. So the, all of the salary, that has been even dedicated to admin has been coming out of the welfare line. The budget that went before the voters had 20 hours in welfare and 10 hours in admin. Again, I've needed to have the assistance just to catch up on some of these things, so that's the reason for that. We thought that the wage line being at 5 hours, averaging that over the year would more realistically reflect what's happening in welfare. And the 27 hours, I could use that and more in town hall. I think all of us are, working really hard to try to keep up with the administrative requirements of all of our different job responsibilities. There's a heck of a lot more reporting and that kind of thing that happens these days in town halls, and it's just a lot of administration. So that's really the reason for that. All of those other decreases are based on the trends.
I guess the one other point I would make is It was proposed last year, so you may remember or recall, but final expenses has always been historically built into the miscellaneous line. It's not a miscellaneous expense or general assistance allotment, it is for final expenses. It's an average of $750 per request for final expenses. I've broken that from miscellaneous to its own line to be more appropriate. That would bring the miscellaneous line down considerably from that. I do have a one-time, one-year purchase of $750 for computer software, which is just for welfare documentation. Right now, all of my stuff is old-fashioned, pen and paper. I don't have any kind of reporting system. This is a one-time fee. There's no added extras throughout the use of the program. So that $850 will change down to $100 continuing forward in future years.
Questions on that?
Okay, you wanna talk, you want me to talk?
Oh, yeah, I mean, this is, you know, the wage adjustments, we had, Karen, there was an adjustment in hers, and, one of the part-timers, there that, had an increase, because the beach, the Recreation Commission was paying a higher rate at the beach, and then, which was in line with, you know, with what should have been paid, so we increased it for the other hours that are not out of the beach fund to equal that with the rate of pay that the beach commission is paying. And that's the assistant recreation director. And then the other position is the 12 hours from the part-time that was put up in with 20 hours in building and then 12 hours here. So, you know, that is a $26,000 increase there, but the recreation budget as an overall percentage of the town was what?
Less than 2%.
Less than 2%. So those folks, you know, do a lot of work. They work hard all summer long, and during the winter time, Karen, we're going to speak to some of the increased programs we're going to be able to do with the addition of the other position.
Right, I mean, the gentleman that we're speaking of has worked for me going on 3 years, and he has a background not only in building maintenance, he's been the maintenance person at the beach the last 3 years. If you see the gazebo's been rehabbed, the signs have been done, he's done all of that on his own. He has a lot of experience with that. He also has experience with catering and restaurants, and so I can very easily plug him into all the things we do. And there's a real need to expand the senior programming in this town. I've had a lot of people say, you're not offering us anything but bingo, but at the moment, it's me, full-time, and Diana at 25 hours a week. There's only, anytime a child is present in a program, it has to be 2 of us. So if I have to burn her hours up by children's program, or really any program, you should have 2 adult supervision if children are involved. And that goes with the sports programs and all of that. And all of those are self-supporting. And what happens is Diana, as soon as we start planning camp and the beach opening, all that, she switched to the revolving funds. So you're really only paying for a half year at part-time in my salary. And then with the addition of the other person for the 12 hours a week, I couldn't plug him into the beach because I can't pull 12 hours. And if there's no programming going down, the way the revolving fund is set up, or the way that the warrant is set up, it has to be affiliated with the beach to take it from the beach. So she transfers back in. But I mean, there's more than enough work to go around for probably multiple people. But we split it between myself and Diana at the current time, and then if we could bring in the other person, it would be a bonus, because he would be able to help with the big things we do, Halloween, Easter, all the senior meals, the Toys for Kids all that stuff he would be wonderful at. Winter Carnival. So it's a very easy transition for me to plug him in. And again, our department is so small for what we have in output. If you look at these other towns around us, they have 5, 6, 7 employees. You got me and a part-timer right now doing everything that encompasses what recreation does. And there is a call for more senior programming. And we can't, if I don't get more hours, I can't accommodate it. It's as simple as that. We're already, we can do a little bit here and there, but not to the need what they want. And the population is aging. And I feel bad, and I always say it's a great idea, help me get some volunteers to do it, but as anybody knows that's trying to find volunteers, they're not out there anymore. They really aren't. And even with the community service that the school offers, I have one kid that has stepped forward to help with soccer this year, because although we have the kids coming to soccer, we don't have any parents volunteering their time. I have 2 people. So we ended up breaking all the kids into 3 teams, which are going to be huge teams. Nothing I can do about it. I'm going to be involved, Diana will be involved, and we'll both be helping coaching, even though it should be by parent volunteers and people from the kids from the school and stuff, if they just won't come. I don't know how to entice them any more than asking and begging, and what happened is one of my summer camp employees has now volunteered to come back and help coach, and she's going to talk to some of her friends. But it'd be great if we could have a bigger input from the school to get these kids to step up and help, which offsets the cost of running any program.
Where are the helicopter parents when you need
Yeah,
them?
I know. They're sitting back helicoptering, but not participating, unfortunately.
Just to tie in something that from longtime association with the budget committee, I'm happy to see, and that is the money for the Wakefield Resource Center, because many people from Milton go up and use that, and it's a wonderful compliment for one more thing to do.
It is, but if we offered stuff here, unfortunately, that excludes a lot of people that don't have the transportation to get to Wakefield. So even though they have it there, if they can't get to it, it makes no difference in the world. It really doesn't. It'd be nice to expand our program to be a couple days a week. I have a lady coming in now that's going to do Zoom to Gold. We just, somebody reached out to Ernie and me about doing a memory cafe for the families dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff right in our own community. And that's a new program starting up. But every program that starts up takes more hours for us to, on our end, which I'm more than glad to accommodate it. It just, like I said, it's more hours. And as far as the wage increases, I've been with the department for 23 years. 13 as a volunteer and 10 as the director, and I'm now at entry level of new staff coming in for my pay. I'm not even making what some of the assistant directors are making in the area, and that's why the pay increase, the pay adjustment was asked for, because it is what it is. I just heard another lady yesterday in Rochester, 18 years in the water department as the head office manager, and the new hire came in last week at 2 cents less an hour than what she's making after 18 years. And because of the trends in wages, and it's an employee's market right now. People, they can't get help. People can't get help, and it's sad, but it is what it is. And like Ernie said with Diana, the commission agreed that she was not at where she even remotely, she should be at where I am right now. And instead, she was making less than some of the new employees coming in. She's got 3 years experience and a business management degree, 10 years outside experience, and she was working for $15 an hour for the town. And what my problem is, I can see both of those employees walking away, and it would be sad if either one of them did. For what they're bringing to the table, and it's, just say, sorry, I can't do anything for you, and somebody else is wagging this nice salary in front of their face, and we lose very talented people all the time, and it is what it is. We have to try to get them to a point where they want to stay and want to buy in to this town. And they do. Both these employees are great people, but it's up to the taxpayers for whether to, keep them on hand or not.
Unfortunately, we don't have all the taxpayers sitting here
Yeah, I know.
listening to the explanation.
Right.
So what they see is just
A
the
huge
numbers.
increase, right.
And so it's not gonna make sense to them. They're gonna take the other side of the
Correct.
coin.
Correct.
We have very few public represented today. Thank you for the Burkes showing up and participating. But that's one of the problems we have, because
Right.
people will complain about services not having them, or, maybe we can get rid of services that we don't need because our tax rate's too high. But if nobody can hear this
Right.
backside explanation, it's always gonna go in the opposite direction for us, so.
And Ernie gave a great perspective coming in with fresh eyes. He's like, the talent pool here is
Sure.
phenomenal. But yet, it is, like I said, it is what it is. I can beg, borrow, and steal to keep these guys happy, but ultimately they're gonna go.
Yeah.
Because they can't, there's no incentive for them. I had one of them driving 45 minutes to get here to make $15 an hour. So,
Pass along our appreciation.
I will.
And Karen, just so you know, an earning member, I mentioned about the increases. This is gonna even look worse when it's calculated, because it's actually over a 50% increase when you look at
Right.
the line items. It shows 34% of an increase in the salary, but it's 51, almost 52%. But having the explanation behind it, that it is also included part of the work for the government building aspect of it, that's something that I think we need to have out there, Not just waiting for Karen to answer that.
Well, thank you, yes,
Yeah.
because I think, Dennis, with what you said, I think we need to actually memorialize that and make sure we get it out there. So anyway, let's finish up the next budget, and come
Yeah.
back to this a little bit.
And I will just add, I will toot Karen's horn, because, there's many a nights that, I'm out driving around doing my thing, and her truck is down at the town beach. We're talking 6, 7 o'clock at night. And I will call her and I'll say, Karen, go home to your family. Well, what are you doing? And she's just so dedicated. And, this is she is salary. She don't get overtime. And she works many of weekends throughout the year. And, and the recreation is a huge, department for the town. A lot of people use the recreation, and I just she deserves it if that's what I'm saying. So.
Anything else for Karen? Now for the library.
The largest increase, as you can see, is in wages. I've done a lot of research on what other libraries in similarly sized towns are paying their employees. And I will speak specifically to my staff. I have a couple of people that are making $9 an hour and are writing grants for me and are very professional on what they do. They are knowledgeable on computers. They follow all of the guidelines for the ALA as far as good librarian practices. And I really think it's time to have them in line with other libraries in the area. And so that's where most of the increase is. This $1,000 increase with heat, yesterday I did find out what the contract number is, and I can bring that back down to 35. $100. The postage line, I'm bringing up $20 because the P.O. box rent has gone up. The technology line is, I'd like to get a new Circ Desk computer. Our current computer is 8 years old. It is very sluggish, and it's difficult when you have people stacked up and waiting to get moved. The mileage and the membership dues line, essentially I've changed a little bit, and that's based on the past couple of years' line spent. And miscellaneous line, I keep on thinking my staff, I'm going to keep my staff forever and ever, and as it turns out, life happens and they keep on going away. And all for very, really good reasons, but that miscellaneous line is what I use for the background checks.
So one other thing I'd like to mention with the library, actually met with the trustees and talked about the salary issue. And I think, I know, Karen, Betsy, you can, speak to that, how that went, if they're supportive of
Yeah, well, one of my trustees, if he wants to turn his hat around, the trustees are very supportive. They have seen all of this backup material. I can make it available to any of you so that you can see what other towns near us, other towns that have similar sized populations, what they are paying. So anyway, the trustees have seen all of that and are very supportive of this increase.
I will turn around with a different hat. When the world was young, I used to go down to our school library, which had the same relationship down in New York State that the Newt Library has to the school district, and I would paste in those little cards in the back of the book where you would put the card in with the due date. What Betsy is talking about as the search desk computer is not directly part of the town-wide technology package. This is the guts of the operation of the library that tracks how books come in and go out, what books are there, and it is a wonderful system which I'm not qualified to operate. So that, and the other thing is the courtesies and cordiality of the staff at the library in Milton Mills are just as good as the courtesies and cordiality of the staff here in town. And who said, Karen said that Ernie has been absolutely complimentary to the quality of people we've been able to attract. And that goes across the town, and for me and my hat as a library trustee.
And I'll just add that, the Milton Mills Library is a huge asset to Milton Mills. You would not believe the amount of patrons that come in and out of that library. And with it being repaired back to, what it is today through the grants that, that Betsy and her staff have written, it's phenomenal. And I just want to thank you for your dedication of keeping with the library. I mean, you've been there for a long time, and that just shows you what kind of person you are to stay employed with the town of Milton. So I do think this raise is necessary to retain the help we have, not only the library, but going back to recreation and really with the whole town. If you can't retain the help that we have, that you know, that they bring to the town, with the dedication they have, you know, people are just gonna keep, you know, there's gonna be a huge turnover, it costs a train, and it goes on and on and on. So I just think, you know, that these raises are necessary, and we'll see what, you know, an election. So, but anyways, thanks, Betsy.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Yep.
I would like to say that librarian Betsy Baker has helped me greatly over the last few years with the restoration of that library up there. She's been hand in hand with me, helping to manage the finances that go in and out of that building, the different projects that are separated between different contractors. And this year, I'd really like to comment that I was down 7 positions in between 3 of my departments, and did not have all the time that I needed to put into the restoration of that library this year. And without even asking or saying anything, Betsy stepped up and she took on that project and led that project without me being there, and just kept me abreast of it, of what was going on, and I greatly appreciate that. And I really think that Betsy is a huge asset to the town of Milton. And, I just want to thank her publicly for stepping up and doing that.
And Ernie, this is just an ask for everyone afterwards. It would be, you know, when we get ready to go off and look at the budget aspect, knowing how many people that these line items for the salaries account for would make it a lot easier for us to go back and justify. When you just look at a line item that says you get a 50% increase and you go, how many people is that, you know, really touching? I know the townspeople would like to know, and if we're gonna go back and figure out whether or not this is justified, we really need to understand that.
We will definitely do that.
That
You
is
know,
8 people.
You got what?
8 people.
You have 8 people under
Me
that?
and 7 staff.
Well, and see, looking at that total number, when you figure, okay, is that 1, 2, 8 people, that tells you that there's really not a lot per person in there. And it's same thing with every one of the areas, you know, that we've got, so.
Yeah, we will definitely do that. I mean, we have a little bit more to do, but I'll just say that I do want to thank staff here, because they challenged me to try to get this to you as early as possible in the year. We, you know, that last column with the percentages, that I've been going through, there are some that are right and some that are wrong, and
Yeah,
so,
well, it
thank
really
you.
depends on how much the money is, you know,
Yeah.
whether or not it looks right or wrong, but yeah,
Yeah,
it makes
so-
a difference.
Yeah,
So-
so, but anyway, we'll get that straightened out, and we will provide more information on all, because the department heads have all done a detailed breakdown,
Mhm.
and we did send that out with the last packet, but people really probably haven't had a chance to look at it. So we'll make sure that all this is corrected, we'll get all that out to you next week, and we'll get things posted on the town website as well.
Good.
So,
Thanks, sir.
let's see what else we have here. Economic development, Dennis, do you want to speak to that? Put your hat on?
There's really not a lot to talk about. Obviously, we've had $2,500 budget. We finally did spend some money, and we got our signs put up. Thank you, Pat Smith, for doing that for us. Our ERZ zone signs we had made up, they are now up and visible. Primarily, it's bunched into professional services. We have plans to do a combined board committee kind of forum discussion to make sure that any plans that EDC has going forward, that all the other boards and committees are looking in the same direction. So we want to try to and it also kind of dovetails with the new master plan. So we're looking to bring in some help to try to bring all of those the people together and kind of moderate that forum. So there's some training in there as well. There should have been. I think I put some money into training. It seems to have changed a little bit since I submitted it, but we're planning to use the $2,500 that's been in there for several years now to benefit going forward with the new master plan and getting people in the right direction.
The debt service, that's straight off of the schedules that we have. Principals in the first schedule and the interest is in the second. There's not really much to say about that. That's what we owe and we have to pay it. Yeah.
I love the name for that, sanitary service. I think that's the best name I've ever heard for sewage. One of my line items are skewed obviously because of the default budget comparison to the proposed budget. For instance, that the third line from the bottom, equipment maintenance, was $4,000 for the default. I had last year, if the budget had gone through, I actually had the $6,000, so it would have been a across the board zero increase. A lot of mine are skewed, except for the last two, which was the two that I want to talk about because obviously they're big. The equipment purchase line nominally has been $500 for years for small purchase equipment items. I need requesting a new refrigerated proportional sampler mandated by EPA. I have to have one. The one I have now I bought 30 years ago. I've literally got the door hanging on with bungee cords, and it's pretty well rotted out. It's still functioning, but it's to the point where I'm going to DPS or somebody's going to say something. So I need to get that replaced. That alone is $5,600. So that's why that line is up significantly from where it has been in past years. And the last one I have miscellaneous. You see $5,000 there. That is an estimate for some engineering that we're having done. We may have to, depending on how far this goes, we may have to rename that line. I put it there so it wasn't hidden in the budget anywhere. It's there. Every year, the town has to submit a engineering report to New Hampshire DES based on the groundwater sampling at the site. Over the years, we've noticed that there's been a slight, and I emphasize slight, increase in nitrate, some bacteria, and chloride in the below the wastewater plant, downgrading, if you will, from the upgradient side, ambient water quality. The DES has written us a letter saying we need you to look at this situation, come back to us with a plan. So that's what we're doing. We've had a initial meeting with engineering firm to start taking a look at this. We want to be proactive about the whole situation. DES hasn't mandated anything. This was exploratory to figure out what's going on. It may be nothing or it could be significant. We have to find out. So I estimate it's like $5,000 in there for this year. Depending on where this goes, if it stays in that relative figure, I thought it was appropriate for the budget. If that number ballooned because we need some specific testing or more professional services, if that line balloons, I may come back to the Board of Selectmen and ask that we take that out of capital reserve. But for now, I thought it would be appropriate to make sure that everybody knew what was going on, that it was in this budget, and this is an estimated amount for right now. We won't know what that's going to be for quite a while. The engineers are getting geared up now to undertake some of those studies, so we'll be working with them for the next probably year before we know anything. But that's why those two lines are up specifically. So.
Yeah, question on the miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea whether it is an inflow problem, that there's some problem with the piping coming into the treatment, whether it is an outfall reading because treatments are not sufficient, or whether or not it is a potential lagoon failure.
I think that it's not anything to do with piping, it's nothing to do with the influent, nothing to do with effluent. What we perceive it to be is probably the liner. The wastewater plant has a liner in it, and it's 32 years old. I have had some minor tears and rips in it that I've either repaired or had repaired. And we're keeping up with those now on an annual basis. I lower the lagoon levels down 4 or 5 feet. I go in, I walk it, I fix whatever I need to fix. But I'm more concerned right now with the liner being porous, something, because it gets exposed to the UV light, to the sun and stuff like that, the ice moving up and down. So I personally am leaning towards the liner being a little more porous than it should be, and therefore we have some leakage, if you will. Not a rip or tear, it's just a minor amount of sewage or treated effluent getting into the groundwater. That's where I think it's coming from, but I'm not sure. That's why we got an engineering firm involved. We're going to be looking at doing some sampling of the liner to find out if this theory is credible or not, or if it's something else. We're also looking at our testing protocol to make sure we're getting that the sampling that we're getting is competent and accurate, to be sure to see if we need to change that at all. There is potentially some upgradient sources that may be impacting us also, that may not be us. So there's several different areas that we need to pursue over the next year or so.
Thank you.
Yep.
I got a question on this. Doesn't the sewer have a revolving fund?
Yes. Yep.
Can we use some of that for the equipment purchase? Or for the last 2 lines? Now, I haven't seen a report in a long time, but I know there's a lot of money in there.
There is.
I'd like to be able to use some of that to lower this, at least equipment purchase anyway.
You can. It's up to the Board of Selectmen. To me, I know $5,600 probably sounds like a lot to most people, and it is. Relative to sewer costs, it isn't. And at some point in time, the town is going to need those capital reserve funds that were set aside since the plant was built, and there's probably around $500,000 in there now in that fund.
Sounds right.
We're going to need that for potential liner replacement and also for sludge removal and disposal costs down the road. So if we tap into that now, we're going to reduce that total down, and then at some point, we may have to go back in. If those costs are greater than the 500, we're going to have to collect that money in the future. So I'd rather leave it there now for this minor amount of money and leave it in the budget. But it's up to the Board of Selectmen if they feel they want to take it out, they can. So it's up there. It's up to the Selectmen have the sole discretion on sewer department funds to make those decisions. We don't need to have the vote of the public. So.
It would also depend on what the description of the warrant is that passed to start that capital reserve fund. If it didn't meet the criteria, they couldn't take it.
One other thing, I don't remember offhand. Have you put in for the CIP for future uses? Yes, you do have a study. I believe you put money into the CIP, and you probably should add to it maybe down the road. As you were saying, you might need some of that money.
Yeah, right now the budget for the sewer department historically have been about that default budget, about $85,000. That's where we've been for years. Okay, this year because of those 2 other ones I just discussed have brought it up quite a bit. Our annual revenue is about 90,000 that we collect from sewer user fees, all right? So we've always had a little bit of surplus there. You know, if this, you know, the budget's pretty close right now. I did talk to Ernie when he first came on board. I haven't talked to him since about it because of budgets and everything else, but I think at some point in time, we need to come to the Board of Selectmen and look at those revenues versus expenditures and long-term capital expenditures down the road as to whether we need to adjust the sewer rates. The sewer rates have come down a lot since I first started because we didn't know what to collect back when in '87, nobody knew what to collect. So those numbers have come down a lot, but now we're at the bare minimum. So we may need to bump that up a little bit to start putting money aside into that capital reserve for future money. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, and so in touching on that, and just to make it clear, we know that you've got the budget here, but that money that is coming in from revenue from the water and sewer basically comes back as an offset back to the town.
Yes, sewer.
Sewer.
The sewer, excuse me, sewer. But, all right.
Yeah, if you're not on the sanitary services, we'll call it, you're not paying for it.
No,
So,
I
no, I'm just making,
Yeah, I want to make it
reiterating
clear
that.
too. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So I wanted to, I'm just going to use my notes here. Our hope as the department heads is that you will deliberate over these budgets, formulating questions within your two boards and then funnel them through the town administrator's office. We just want to ensure we minimize cross-messaging and confusion as the Selectmen and Budget Committee develop recommendations of their own. We will provide you with in-depth written responses, and if after you have received the responses you still are not clear on something, we will arrange for the pertinent department head to attend the meeting. The objective of this approach is to minimize the total number of meetings and to provide a clearer, more concise process for all concerned before finally coming together before the end of October, hopefully, to reconcile both bodies' budgets into a single recommendation, if that's possible. At which point we can educate the public about the decision and recommendations before the requisite budget committee hearings are held. So, and I would also like to say a couple of people have alluded to my comments about the professionalism in town. And I've said this, and I absolutely mean it. I've worked in larger cities in Texas, and in Maine, and here, in New Hampshire. And I can honestly say I have not worked with a bunch of people that know their jobs better, they're professional, they know what they're doing. It's just incredible. And for a small town of Milton, we really have a talent pool here that you should be proud of. So I just, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm not just saying it. These folks know what they're doing. And I thank you very much. And as far as all these things that you pointed out, I also say, I love as many eyes on a budget as we can get because you spot these issues like you brought up today. We will get those corrected, and we will provide more information on the number of people that these wage increases impact, just so you have it in your deliberations and the general public knows what it is we're doing. So again, and thank everybody here for coming in today on a Saturday and doing this. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything?
I've got one request, as long as we're going forward with trying to provide information like salaries or people related to salary increases. One of the things I think is important for us to know is a projection of what is being spent in 2019 against those budgets, not just the budget number. I think that's an important thing for us to have, to understand. Okay, if we had $1,000 in the budget, if you only spent $500 of that $1,000, why is it going up by to $1,200? Why are we doing that? So we would be looking for more detail about current spending levels or projections of spending. And I know I've always been a proponent of a calendarized budget schedule because it's difficult for us to understand when we do, like if we go see Pat and we talk about his monthly budget and how he did, and, you know, he's falling behind when it should be 25%, and he's falling behind on his spending, it's because he plans to spend it 3 months down the road. Well, if we don't know that, we spend an awful lot of time wondering where all that money is, and, you know, and why isn't it being spent? Why are we approving budgets that, you know, are not going to get spent? So in that vein, it would be great to be able to get projected spending out of that 2019 budget for us to be able to analyze it.
So, spend plan, cash flow for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, that would give us a good leg up on understanding, you know, what needs to happen for 2020. If that makes sense.
Chief, got his hand
So
up behind.
one of the problems, especially for my budget, on giving you a projection like that, there are certain things that happen in law enforcement and for us that we can't project towards. So if we have, say, an animal case, which is a case that costs us usually a large amount of money, if we have an animal case where we have to seize animals and we have to store and hold those animals, we can be, the town can ultimately be liable for the storage of those animals while the case is pending in court, and if anything, we should lose part of the case in court. I don't have a line in my budget, nor does the town have a line, that we can find those funds for. So I have to then, if we pull a case like that, I then have to sit on almost my entire budget until that case dissolves and wait for it. So I can try to give you a projection like that, but ultimately, those projections aren't going to play out anywhere close to where they are.
Yeah, so just to piggyback on that, earlier, we did do a spend plan, and of course, from that, you have an animal case. I don't even know if that's resolved yet, is it?
It is not going to resolve until December.
Right, so, and at this point, do you know how much it's up to?
At this point, it's
cost?
$27,000.
So that's
by
the
the time it hits December, it'll be $35,000.
Just like budgeting is a best guess always, right? I mean, that's the nature of the beast. So be the projected spending. We gotta have numbers to analyze. So we don't have numbers to analyze. We're just sitting around, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
That with the chief having offered a clear and detailed explanation of unforeseen events, I will offer a plan for the DPW, which will be 26 snowfalls every second Thursday, 3.7 inches each.
Too much detail, Larry. Way too much detail. We're looking at the numbers.
All right, the same thing.
Thank you.
And I'll just add thanks, Ernie, for all your hard work. We appreciate it, you know, everything you've done for the town so far, that you've been here, and we're moving in a good beat forward, and that's what it's all about. So I appreciate everything.
I'll second that.
I'll third it, thank you.
And I would like to address, I know I was one of the ones that pushed to try to have the all-in-one meeting. I hope everyone felt it's a lot easier to do this so that we're not going off in multiple meetings with each of the budget committee and selectmen and then having to come back. So I hope this makes it a lot easier in the long run.
Yeah, and sorry, but thank you for bringing me back on the board. Thank you for your patience, and with the number of years that I have spent on the budget committee, it is a pleasure to have the detail and perception of the people here. And one thing we haven't done is thank the town itself for the structure and those wonderful glazed donuts. I only had one, but particularly what Ernie said, which is that he is concerned about cross messages and using the resources of his position for good contact with the department heads so that he is functioning as a central telephone exchange rather than setting us all up for a game of telephone and you don't know who is saying what last. And I particularly like that, and thank you.
All right. Just thanks again for everybody for taking the time today to be here and go through this. I think it was very productive, and I think we've made pretty good time.
Could I ask the selectmen to stay convened just so that we can, we have a deed that needs to be signed and so forth, and I just want to talk to you about that.
Everybody takes.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tammy? Aye. You wanna go? Okay.
Yeah, she said it. I had to write out the paper.
Larry. I didn't hear from Larry.
Larry, do you want to adjourn or not?
Yeah, are you all in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Just say aye. Just say aye.
Please pray for rain, though.
Larry says aye.
We'll fill it in later, Larry.
I cracked up laughing when you
Thanks,
were.
Dave.
You don't want to come
Aye.
it's gonna rain, you know? That's,
Hey, now,
Ryan about that.
this gets more.
No, we're getting this
Yeah, take it.
That's Sandy's favorite, though.
Yes, you're gonna eat it?